leave at least 12 deaths after UN Security Council approved sanctions against armed groups. Bolivia's government calls for dialogue with right-wing sectors despite their persistence in holding a strike that claimed the life of one person. And in Germany, mobilizations continue against the measures implemented against the energy crisis and Berlin's support to Ukraine. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news, and we do so in Haiti. Violence continues unabated. Gang confrontation leaves at least 12 dead after UN Security Council decided to impose sanctions against armed groups. The confrontation between the two most dangerous criminal gangs in the country led to a series of crossfire attacks aimed at keeping territorial control in the district of La Croix-de-Bouquet, west of Port-au-Prince. Human rights organizations warn that as part of this conflict, entire families have been forcibly displaced and are seeking refuge in other communities. They denounced the slow response of police authorities to be present in the zone. In Venezuela, the last group of crew members legally held in Argentina arrived Friday. They are the Iranian citizens Golmer Raza Ghasemi, Abdul Basset Mohammadi, Said Balizadeh, and the Venezuelans Victor Manuel Perez and Mario Arraga Urdaneta. According to local media, on September 14th, the crew members were officially released from Argentina, since during the investigations they did not find sufficient evidence for them to continue in that country. Likewise, the Conviasa aircraft belonging to TeleSUR company will continue to be seized at the request of the United States justice system. In this regard, Venezuelan authorities were pleased with the release of the entire crew. The President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, reiterated that the binational agreement established with the Congress of Colombia will allow progress to be made on issues that will benefit both peoples.
We have an agreement that will allow us the understanding of both Congresses to address in a common way social, commercial, economic, political, and social control issues that are fundamental for the harmonic development of the life of our border people. It is a very lively border of more than 4,000 kilometers of living existence, where there is a permanent flow of Colombian brothers towards Venezuela and Venezuelan brothers towards Colombia.
In the same context, Colombian Senator Gloria Flores announced that 5 bi-regional meetings will be held along the common border with Venezuela.
Regional meetings we are going to establish, and today's work is to define the dates where we will meet the Caribbean axis with the state of Zulia, the Andean axis with the state of Táchira, with Barinas and Apure with the departments of Arauca, the same with the departments of Ishara with Apure and Amazonas, and we will finish with the meeting in Guainia in the state of Amazonas.
In Colombia, Major General Henry Torres Escalante confessed before the Special Jurisdiction for Peace to being responsible for the murder of 296 people while he was commander of the Army's 16th Brigade between 2005 and 2007. Torres Escalante accepted charges of perpetration by means of crimes against humanity, murder, and forced disappearance of people. With the confession, the Major General becomes the highest-ranking officer to accept responsibility for false positives during the government of Álvaro Uribe Velás. In the hearing, 17 other ex-military officers acknowledged their maximum responsibility as perpetrators of the murders in 212 events that occurred in Casanare, Boyacá, Meta, and Arauca. President of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, stated that it is necessary to investigate if someone is financing political groups linked to the assassination attempt on Vice President Cristina Fernandez. During an event at the inauguration of a whirlpool plant in the Buenos Aires municipality of Pilar, President Fernandez urged the population and other authorities not to forget the attack against the Vice President on September 1st. The head of state asserted that political violence against members of the executive cannot be allowed to take place, while he reaffirmed his support to the political leader. The Argentinian president demanded that the corresponding inquiries be carried out as soon as possible. The government of Bolivia called for dialogue with right-wing sectors despite their persistence in calling a strike that resulted in the death of citizens. The presidency minister, Maria Anela Prada, stated that the initiative seeks to avoid damage and millionaire losses in the different sectors of Santa Cruz department. After their last call for a strike, in the middle of which a man was beaten to death early this Saturday morning by a group of strike supporters, the officials stated that they expect the participation of civic representatives and the Minister of Development Planning, Sergio Cusicanqui. The presidential authority also added that they received a response from Luis Fernando Camacho, governor of Santa Cruz, and from Vicente Cuellar, a spokesman for the committee, to participate in the roundtable. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can now follow us on TikTok at the account at TeleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Germany, demonstrations continue this Saturday against measures taken in response to the energy crisis and Berlin's support for Ukraine. The country is facing a wave of protests in different cities due to the high cost of living and the government's policy regarding the situation in Ukraine. These mobilizations call for solidarity in the face of the crisis, creating social security and ending dependence on fossil fuels. In this regard, demonstrators expressed their discontent with the energy crisis and inflation, which has reached historic levels in this country. This is a consequence of the European Union and United States sanctions against Russia that continue to generate damage in the economies of the region. In Italy, the leader of the right-wing party Brothers of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, was sworn in on Saturday as Prime Minister in an official ceremony before President Sergio Mattarella. Meloni, the first woman in history to become head of government in Italy, delivered her swearing-in speech in front of the head of state and then presided over the swearing-in of her 24 ministers. The right-wing governing alliance formed by Brothers of Italy, Matteo Salvini's League, and Silvio Berlusconi's Forza Italia has an absolute majority in both the Senate and the Chamber of Deputies after winning the elections of last September 25th. Two miners were found dead Friday on a migrant boat carrying nearly 40 people in the Mediterranean Sea, and a search was underway for a woman reported missing from the vessel, Italy's Coast Guard said. According to Mediterranean Hope, a migrant and refugee program of the Federation of Protestant Churches in Italy, who were present when survivors were disembarked on the Italian island of Lampedusa, the boat departed from Sfax in Tunisia, and the passengers were from the Ivory Coast, Senegal, Mali, and Guinea-Conakry. According to the Coast Guard, a Tunisian fishing boat alerted that the migrants were struggling within Malta's search and rescue zone. In accordance with Maltese authorities, the Italian Coast Guard dispatched a motorboat to their aid. The statement said the fishing boat had told rescuers there had been an explosion on the migrants' boat. In Canada, the Prime Minister of the North American nation, Justin Trudeau, announced the prohibition of the sale of guns to the public in the entire national territory.
Our government introduced measures to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. Today, our national freeze on handguns is coming into force. From today forward, it is no longer legal to buy, sell, or transfer a handgun in Canada. We have frozen the market for handguns in this country, and our ban on imports that took effect in August remains in place. This is one of the strongest actions we've taken on gun violence in a generation.
In Russia, following the recent wave of Ukrainian attacks, the border provinces of Kursk and Belgorod extend the yellow alert of terror alert. This level of alert has been maintained in these territories since April 11th, together with the cancellation of all flights to and from Kursk and Belgorod, as well as 9 other cities in the southern European part of Russia. These measures were implemented by the regional governments to ask their citizens not to lower their vigilance and to alert the authorities of suspicious individuals, abandoned objects, and unmanned aerial devices. These are preventive measures after the increase in artillery attacks and sabotage actions of the Ukrainian army in the area. Russia announced that Washington blocked the participation of its representatives in the next conference of the International Atomic Energy Agency to be held in the U.S. between October 26 and the 28th. The State Atomic Energy Corporation, Rosatom, described this action as hostile and stressed that it is a disrespect to the work of the international organization in cooperation in the field of peaceful use of atomic energy. In a statement, Rosatom stressed the need for Moscow to participate in the OIAA ministerial conference to be held in Washington, where the security of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is subject to constant shelling by the Ukrainian armed forces, could be discussed. On the same subject, the Russian ambassador to Washington, Anatoly Antonov, stated that Moscow is doing everything possible to avoid a nuclear war and added that the Slavic nation remains committed to the position of the 5 nuclear powers that there can be no winners in a nuclear war and that it should never be fought. Russian President Vladimir Putin also accused the West of practicing nuclear blackmail against Russia and recalled that Moscow has the means of destruction some more advanced than those of NATO to preserve its territorial integrity. We have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces opened live fire and fired tear gas canister at farmers attending land near the border fence south of the Gaza Strip. According to local media reports, the incident took place in the Khuzar area of the Khan Yunis. Gaza border farmers were attacked by Israeli occupation forces stationed at a military watchtower along the southern border with Gaza, being forced to stop the work on their lands and leave the area. The attacks by the Israeli army against farmers along the Gaza border have become almost routine. This is intended to prevent the development and cultivation of the lands near the border fence. Israeli tanks and armored vehicles often cross the border and carry out systematic destruction of the land near the border. Several towns and cities in Ethiopia have held anti-Western rallies. The rallies are believed to have been organized by local governments in support of the federal government's latest offensive in the ongoing war in the Tigray region. Local government officials and their supporters attract hundreds of thousands of people across the country. Many people displayed banners urging the United States to stop supporting the Tigray People's Liberation Front, while others were purely anti-Western. This came amid hopes for talks between the Ethiopian government and the PLF to end the war raging across the region. Officials Chad government spokesman raised to 60 the number of fatalities in the operation unleashed last Thursday in the country's 2 largest cities. Chad government spokesman Assis Mohamed Saleh said 30 people had been killed in the capital, N'Djamena, and 32 others in the country's 2nd largest city, Moundou. Authorities imposed a curfew after the violence, which came amid demonstrations in the Central African nation against the 2-year extension of power by interim leader Mahamat Idris Deby. Thursday's unrest was unprecedented in Chad, which saw little public dissent during the previous regime of Deby's father, who ruled for more than 3 decades until his assassination last year. 18 people, including 2 policemen, were killed in communal violence between nomadic herdsmen and farmers in Nigeria's central Benue state. The violence broke out early Wednesday. Herders stormed the farming village of Gebji in Ukum district, firing indiscriminately, said Paul Hemba, security advisor to the Benue state governor. Disputes between cattle herders and farmers over land grazing and water rights are common in central and northwestern Nigeria. Several others were injured and hospitalized. The Benue State Commissioner of Police, Well Abbas, said the attack was in retaliation for the killing of 5 Fulani herdsmen by local residents. Tensions between communities sometimes take on ethnic and religious dimensions in Nigeria, which has dozens of ethnic groups and is divided between the predominantly Christian south and the predominantly Muslim north. In Burkina Faso, the military leader Ibrahim Traoré was sworn in as interim president with the promise to call elections in July 2024. During the event, Traoré pledged to defend the constitution and the transitional charter. In this regard, the new transitional president stated that he was forced to take the leadership of the country because terrorism can no longer be described as a conventional war. Burkina Faso has experienced a significant increase in insecurity since 2015, with attacks by terrorist groups which have led to a wave of internally displaced persons and refugees to other countries in the region. Over 800 migrants, including dozens of Tunisians, were intercepted as they tried to reach Europe via the Italian coastline from the Tunisian coast, the Tunisian National Guard said. The Tunisian authorities announced the arrest of 48 people, including 6 wanted for affiliation to an organized gang with a view to illegally crossing maritime borders in different parts of the country. In recent days, the Interior Ministry declared the arrest of over 1,300 smugglers. The mass departures of Tunisians are caused by the economic crisis, with galloping inflation and an uncertain political situation. Faced with the migratory pressure, Tunisian authorities are struggling to intercept or rescue migrants because of what they say is a lack of resources. Tunisia is also the point of departure for thousands of sub-Saharan Africans and nationals of other poor or war-torn countries. A bus collided with a truck on a highway in central India, killing at least 15 people, police said on Saturday. At least 40 others were injured in the accident, which occurred in Rewa district of Madhya Pradesh state. Late Friday, police said the bus was carrying at least 60 passengers when it rammed into a stationary truck that had just collided with another truck on the highway, police told reporters. Most of the passengers were laborers traveling to their homes in the northern state of Uttar Pradesh to celebrate Diwali, the Hindu festival of lights, they said. India has some of the highest road death rates in the world, with hundreds of thousands of people killed and injured every year. Most crashes are blamed on reckless driving, poorly maintained roads, and aging vehicles. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.